we would like to thank the guild Set Sail for Fail for use of their videos within our guides. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this Warlords of Draenor raiding guide. And in this video, we're going to be taking a look at the Butcher encounter on Mythic difficulty. Now, in order to complete this fight, you're going to want to bring 2 tanks. The DPS and healer composition is kind of down to what your raid wants to bring. We'd recommend 3 to 4 healers and then the remaining melee and ranged DPS, because the DPS check on this fight is stupidly high. Also, because of that reason, you probably want to make the Butcher one of the last bosses you're going to be killing, so that you can actually get gear from the other bosses on Mythic difficulty, and then come back and have the higher DPS in order to push this boss. So, the setup you do take for the healers and the DPS is entirely your own, but we recommend trying to drop as many healers as possible in order to make up for DPS. As we're only going to be covering Mythic changes, if you've not yet gone and checked out our flexible guide for this encounter, then we recommend that you do so now. So in the Mythic version of this encounter, there is only one new ability you're going to have to deal with, and this is the spawning of adds who go by the name of Night Twisted Cadavers. Now these adds are always going to spawn into the room on the opposite side of where the Butcher is, and they've also got no health pools, they can't be damaged, and they will also begin to slowly walk towards the boss when they do spawn. Now, what is key is that when they do come into contact with the boss or with another player, they're going to explode, and when this happens, 2 things will occur. They're going to cast an ability called Palo Bomb, which is going to deal a very high amount of physical damage in an 8-yard radius, and this damage will also ignore any form of armor that you've got, so you do need to be aware of the damage you're going to take from this. And they're also going to leave behind a void zone called Pale Vitriol. And what this means is that anyone who enters this void zone is going to take a very high amount of shadow damage every second, and they're also going to have a debuff placed on them, causing them to take 100% more damage from the Butcher's Cleave ability. This player will also have their movement speed slowed by 30%. Now, what you also need to know about these cadavers is that the longer the fight goes on, the more that are going to spawn every time the Butcher casts his Bounding Cleave ability. Now, in order to deal with these, what you need to do is you need to allocate soakers for them, and we recommend that you use mages or hunters for this. And what you need to do is have these mages or hunters positioned around the outside of the area where you're going to be fighting the Butcher, and then when the Night Twisted Cadavers spawn, you need to simply get them to run into them in order to cause them to explode and not head towards the Butcher. Soakers will need to keep in mind that the Void Zone, which is the Pale Vitriol, that does spawn, will not despawn throughout this fight, so you do need to make sure that you are kind of blowing the Night Twisted Cadavers up in such a way so that the Pale Vitriol is not going to interfere with the raid or come into contact with any other players. It's also worth noting that people that are doing the soaking shouldn't really be taking any of the cleave attacks, as they will be taking 100% more damage from the cleave ability. Now, when it comes to actually killing the Butcher, you're going to have to deal with all of his other abilities that were in the flexible mode, but more specifically when it comes to tanking the Butcher, you want to make sure that he is not being tanked in the center of the room. You want to tank him to one side in order to ensure that the cadavers, the small adds, are going to be spawning on the opposite side of him, meaning that you're going to have more time and space in order to intercept the adds before they actually do reach the boss. Otherwise, they're just going to be spawning all around him if he's bang in the center of the room, and it's just not going to give you enough time to kind of react to it. Additionally, you're also going to have to deal with more damage and abilities hurting a hell of a lot more, as this is the Mythic version of the fight. Now, when you do hit the 30% mark, this is again when he is going to enrage and go crazy, and you will want to save your Time Warps, your Bloodlusts, your Heroisms, and also your second potions for this section of the fight. When this does happen, you're going to want to make sure that you have got a set healing rotation in place, so that players that are taking the cleave debuff from the Butcher are not going to be getting completely wrecked by it. It's also an idea to try and have healing cooldowns and whatnot used earlier on in the fight, so that you are conserving as much mana as possible for later on in the encounter. Even though the fight is roughly 4 minutes long, just over 4 minutes long, you're going to drain your mana really fast trying to keep players alive. So to summarize this encounter on Mythic, you're only going to have one new add and a few abilities to deal with, and they are the Night Twisted Cadavers, and they're exploding in their pools. You're going to need players to soak these ads in order to make sure they don't reach the boss, and you're also going to need to make sure you have set healing cooldowns to make sure players are kept alive, as the mythic damage does deal a lot. Now, there hasn't been many changes in the mythic version of this encounter. The only thing you're going to find the biggest challenge is meeting the DPS and gear checks that are required. So that's going to do it for this Warlords of Draenor raiding guide. As always, if you'd like to view a written version of this guide, you can head on over to flaskup.com or click on the link that's in the video description below. Alternatively, if you'd like to stay up to date with all of our future Warlords of Draenor raiding guides, then please do feel free to subscribe to the channel. As always, thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.